I believe the community's had enough. I believe that the community, particularly in these affected areas, has had enough. And no one's feeling this more than the folks that are living in those neighborhoods. Those are predominantly low-income neighborhoods of Peoria. Lots of good people trying to live their peaceful life, raise their kids, and they're surrounded by this. We talked, it was in the press recently, that the police are working with the NAACP and some other folks, and we're rejuvenating this police-community relations concept. And this is one of the early instances where we're already starting to employ it. I contacted Dr. Rita Ali. She was part of the representation of the NAACP, and asked her if she'd be willing to come along and join us today. And I don't want to speak for her, but she communicated back to me that she's obviously as concerned as we are. They all know what's happening and what's going on in our neighborhoods, and it is problematic. I know there are a lot of other community representatives here today, and I'm very grateful that you came in today. I think we're all going to try and fix this same problem. From my side, we're going to go back to some police tactics to try and cool the shootings down. I'm forming a task force. I'm assigning 16 officers and 2 sergeants to work full-time at night during our highest target hours. 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night till 4 o'clock in the morning are our busiest times of the day. Probably not earth-shattering news to anyone. You probably intuitively knew that, but the data is bearing that out to be true. The sheriff has already committed resources to come ride with us. The Illinois State Police has committed resources to come ride with us and work with us. And many other agencies are going to be participating as well. And we are also committed to sharing our intelligence with them. I recently put Officer Patrick Jordan back in the gang intel unit. And we're working hard to identify who the players are. Obviously, it's a fairly small number of people that are committing these acts. It's not 1,000 people. It's not 500 people. It may be 100 or less that are the folks that are plaguing our neighborhoods, and we're going to work very hard at identifying those folks, and we're going to put pressure on them. The tactics we plan to employ are nothing new. You know, we don't have a cute name for it. It's a task force. We're going to go out and do some old-fashioned police tactics that we know work, right? We're going to look for the people that we know are committing these crimes. We're going to make a lot of traffic stops. We're going to make a lot of field interview stops in these target areas, particularly late at night. And we got young people roaming the streets that we need to talk to, find out why you're out, what you're doing, why aren't you home. Another thing that we're going to do is, starting tonight, we're going to put out a special curfew enforcement initiative as part of this. Unfortunately, there are some places in our city when if you go out and drive around at midnight, other than the fact that it's dark outside, if you look at your watch and it says it's 12, you might think it's noon. And you might think that because you got little kids running around and teenagers, 13, 14, 15 years old, that should be home, need to be home, and they're not safe while they're out. What do we need from the public? We need support. We need some tolerance. Tolerance of police activity, not police abuse, but good active police work. We can't get the job done if we don't stop people. We've got to stop these cars that got guns running in them. We don't always know what car has the guns in it, but we got to get out there and make stops to find them. Officers need to be polite and professional, but they're going to be firm and direct, and this is a dangerous business, particularly at 2, 3 in the morning. We need to ask people within their own neighborhoods and in their own families to check their own behaviors and check their children and grandchildren and nieces and nephews. You know, when I was a teenager, when I told my dad I was going somewhere, he believed me and had trusted me 100%, and then he checked to make sure I wasn't lying. That's what we need from our parents, right? Trust your kids, but check on them. They're not always where they say they are. And then that doesn't mean they're committing crimes, but sometimes when they tell you they're at Johnny's house, they're not. They're running the street with Johnny, or they're running around the street having fun with their friends at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I don't want them to be the next homicide victim. So we're asking parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles to find out what your kids are doing, the teenagers, the young adults. Talk to them. We need folks to come forward and tell us the truth about what's going on. I know there's concern about about retaliation. I know that people are afraid sometimes to come to the police, and I know that sometimes they don't trust the police. But I need information. Call Crime Stoppers. If you don't trust the police, call Crime Stoppers. And I know I've said this, we don't know who's calling. We don't care who's calling. We just need the information. Trust the police. Trust the police. And we've got to get over that. And we've got to get to a point where we realize that the people that we're protecting by not reporting these things are the ones that are causing the damage in our neighborhoods. And it isn't going to change. We can't be there all the time, but in most of these cases, someone's there. Someone sees something, and someone in the neighborhood hears something. Almost no crooks can keep their mouth shut. They all talk about what they do later on. So even if you hear third hand, I heard somebody said that somebody did something, we need to know that there's no bad information, and we'll follow up on it. A lot of this is all about negatives, right? We're all about shootings and killings. But I want to end my part of this before we get to some questions, saying that not all is negative in Peoria, and there's been some huge victories in the city of Peoria. 2 years ago, we had mob violence at almost every public event, from March Madness to Steamboat Days to Heritage Days, you name it. We had unruly young people getting in fights, running over people with strollers while they're trying to walk around. We brought in Carl Cannon and his elite program. And he worked with our officers, and he brought his elite kids who came from the same troubled backgrounds of the kids that are causing the commotion at our festivals, and they helped us clean it up. And it was miraculous. In 2 years, we have not had a single mob event at any one of those functions. If I could clone Carl Cannon, there'd be 100 of them walking around Peoria. Those are the answers we found. Those are the things we're going to pursue and build upon. But we found a way to have our young people at events, let them know what the rules are, let them know what the expectations are, hold them firmly accountable, and we've had great events. The mayor's task force to clean up the city, we're hiring kids to walk through the alleys and the yards and pick up trash. And if you believe in broken windows, and I do, trash laying on the ground looks like the place to throw trash. It looks like the place to graffiti. It looks like the place maybe to grab a lady's purse. All of those things kind of come together. It's all the quality of life and the broken windows and things like the mayor's task force are helping to clean that up. So we've got a lot of good kids in Peoria. This isn't all about bad kids, but that few are ruining some of our quality of life in our neighborhood. And we're going to be about cleaning that up. And we're going to be about stopping these shootings and putting some people in jail. And I hate to say that somebody has to go to prison, but when you take a gun and you act like you're living in a movie or you act like you're living in a video game and you drive around in your car and pop, pop, pop as you pass someone else, you need to go to prison. You need to go there for a long time. And I don't have any sympathy for that fellow. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sheriff McCoy, who has a few words, and Captain Dean Kennedy after that.
I'm here to let you know that those of us outside the city of Peoria realize that this is not only a Peoria City problem. This is a regional problem, a community problem. And we're as dedicated to helping the good command staff and the good officers of Peoria City clean this place up. We're going to do it. Peoria County Jail this morning had 85 people on the floor. We are dedicated to double that number on the floor if people want to go there. If they want to act out, if they don't want to follow the rules, we're going to stand side by side with the men and women of Peoria City Police Department and help clean it up. So it's not only a Peoria City problem, it's a community problem, and we're working together to make it happen. Thank you.
Captain Kennedy.
I just want to echo what the sheriff said. You know, I've got a vested interest in this. I grew up here in Peoria, graduated from Central. My kids graduated from Central. And one thing I do know, that even these areas where we're seeing all these shootings and seemingly bad things happen, the majority of people that live there are good people, and they don't deserve to have to be worried about whether they can walk to the store in safety. They don't need to be coming home and locking themselves in their house because they're afraid to go out on the street. And when Chief Settingsgaard asked us to come, that's something that the state police is going to take very seriously. We will be here assisting them. You're going to see a lot of our officers. We'll be making a lot of traffic stops in those areas.